Recording in progress.
Hello, my name is Dr. Cheryl Burdett, and I am the co-founder and educational director of Precision Point Diagnostics. And I wanted to share with you some exciting changes that we've made to the look of the report. I love being at a place where we're responsive to what people are asking for. And one of the things that you reached out to us and said is we'd really like the summary to just be a little cleaner, more simple, easy to read. So some of the things that you'll notice in terms of some changes is, first of all, the first two pages are now very clearly labeled in terms of patient report summary. And what you see on this summary is a review of which foods are elevated, if you have achieved immune tolerance to your allergies or not, but really took out the numbers. You still have access to that. I'm going to show you where that's at, but just tried to make it very clean for patients to look at in terms of a summary report. And we often suggest really only sharing the patient summary report with them as you're making these recommendations. This will really help your time management, really help your flow, really help to get to the bottom of what is the best diet for them. So you can see just very easy to read, very simple to look at. Then also notice that right here, easy to find at the end of the summary is a definition of the reference range. And so how are you considered high? Well, it's based on your percent population. This is how reference ranges are determined. And so if you are in the top 10% in terms of your level of reactivity, you are considered high for certain foods. And what foods are those? Well, when people have more of an immune reaction to certain food, we want to define the high reference range as slightly larger to accommodate for this. So right here, you see which foods you're in the top 10% for, and those are dairy, casein, wheat, gluten, shellfish, tree nuts, and eggs, the foods that have a higher prevalence in population data in general. For other foods that people tend to be less reactive to, high is defined as the top 5%. So those are your things like watermelon or vanilla or turkey, every other food. So your high is either the top 5 or 10%. Your medium level is 50 to 90% or 75 to 95%. And notice this, low is greater than 10%. So the bottom 10% is defined as normal. Low is anything above 10%. So this is why often we don't take out foods based on the low. It just shows us that there's a minimal level of antibody present. We might just be mindful of those. If they eat a lot of them, be more careful with them. But in general, do note that low is a lot of antibody response. And so it's often not necessary to take those foods out. We just want you to know when the body is making any amount of antibody to the food. Okay, so then other things that you're going to see, and so here again, this part of the report is also labeled the patient report. And so the criteria for the logic just really streamlined. What's taken out here? Well, this diet says eliminate anything that was high with IgG or IgE, and you're going to rotate any moderate IgGs that had any level of complement present. Why? Because complement really increases inflammatory reactions. And so anything that you see in this middle column is a moderate IgG that also has complement. So when you're trying to figure out which IgGs are worse, this is a great place to look. Then we also, of course, you'll decide which diet seems better for the patient. You can look at that less restrictive logic. You're also, and then here is the more restrictive. So they usually use when somebody is sicker, usually used when we need to shut off inflammation more quickly. So here you are eliminating both the high and the moderate IgE and IgG, and you're rotating the low IgG that also has complement present. So again, if you wanted to make sure that you were getting out all of the foods that had both IgG and complement, you would use these rotate lists. You would see the high IgG, would be here in terms of eliminating from the less restrictive, then the moderate IgG with complement, and then the low IgG with complement. So these lists really allow you to isolate where you have that complement interaction, so rather than have to look for both and kind of figure that out on your own, the diets do that for you. So then from there, the last page that we consider a patient report. And so this is page 5. So if you were trying to maybe print it out, just print out pages 1 through 5 for the patient. Easier on your printer, easier for them too. And so this is the immune index. This is that cumulative reaction, IgG, IgE, complement, but we subtract out for IgG4 or for that immune tolerance. And the way I suggest utilizing this list is you're going to eyeball it. You're going to see other foods that got left out of the other diets that they eat a lot of, and then consider taking some of those foods out too. And, you know, even individualizing what the computer algorithm spits out to more appropriately show them what they are sensitive to. So here now we go to page 6, and this is now defined as the physician report. And this is really designed for follow-up visits when you need to look at foods from another angle. And so now here on these pages, you can see you're looking at, okay, well, what food families were they high in? So maybe as a follow-up, if they weren't responding like you'd expect, that you might look back here and go, okay, I'm going to have you take out all shellfish, even more than what was tested for. And then so here are those food families. And then what you're going to see on these pages is you see two things. First, we're giving you the overall level of antibody that's produced, and we're also showing you how reactive does that make your patient compared to the rest of the population. So let's say you just have an overwhelming list, they're really struggling with things. Turn to your physician report, and your physician report will give you some more numbers that are going to help you understand where you can bend and flex with certain removal of foods. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, for example, I might say, you know what, you have a lot of moderates that have come back. We're just going to remove the ones that are in the 80th percentile and up. So beef would come out. Lima beans would come out in this example, navy beans would come out, but we'd be less worried about aspergillus mold because that is 78th percentile. So when you need to kind of ebb and flow, or maybe you want to know not where they're at relative to the rest of the population, but how much antibody did they make overall? So for example, beef puts them in the 89th percentile at a moderate, but with an absolute level of antibody of 10.6, but navy beans only a 4.58 at a moderate, even though that puts them in the 93rd percentile. So you might decide, well, you know what, even though compared to other people you're pretty reactive, it's still just a very low level of antibody for something like your navy bean. So I'm less worried about that and more worried about beef, for example. So this part of the report gives you two things. What's the absolute level of antibody that's produced? And then where does that put them compared to the rest of the patient population? How much antibody, and now how reactive are you compared to everybody else? So a couple of really nice pieces there, but we wanted to keep the numbers in the back. So this is just for you, for your further analysis when you need to kind of ebb and flow with where the patient is at and you know, customize a little more. Again, here are the IgG food families. And then finally, at the end, after the percents and the absolute antibody for IgG, what you see then is also at the end, your biogenic compound list. And what is this? This is not an allergic reaction. This is a table that summarizes, are you reacting to foods that are in a biogenic category? Are you reacting to foods in an IgE way that also have other things in common, like they're high histamine, or they're high and they're on there. There are foods that are on the FODMAP family. And so it gives you just another way to eyeball those things to say, okay, You tend to have more kind of FODMAP reactions. So maybe if you don't improve after this first round or as much as we want, we might try a elemental diet with you or more FODMAP diet with you, because there tends to be some pattern analysis there. So these pages are really designed for a second kind of evaluation. They're designed for when the initial kind of foods are not getting the improvement that you would expect. And so these are more of our physician report. And then anytime you have more in-depth questions, just scan the QR code here. This takes you to the P88 Physician's Guide, where we have whole lists of food families, where we have whole lists of things in terms of reactivity from the environment. Otherwise, frequently asked questions like, why would I be reacting to something I don't eat? What about Candida? What about Aspergillus? That'll give you a lot of information quite quickly. So these are some of the changes we're really excited about. You asked if we could make this a bit more simple for patients. And so that's what these first pages do. Take out the numbers, make it more simple, just share page 1 through 5 with them. And then the rest of this clearly labeled physician report. And this is for your follow-up when you need to continue to fine tune. Thank you. And please just email us or reach out to us if you have any other questions or things that I could help you with. My email is, let me make sure everybody has that in case there are things that you would want to ask. So just follow up with me at cburdette@precisionpointdiagnostics.com, and I am always happy to answer any questions that you might have. Reach out and let me know if there is anything that you'd like to chat about as well. All right, take care.